If you wanted to buy commercial real estate in Los Angeles in the 1980s, you needed institutional money. You needed massive commercial loans, perfect credit, and hard collateral. But one demographic group arrived in California and completely bypassed the American banking system. They possessed no domestic credit history. Mainstream lenders flatly refused to finance them. So they deployed a centuries-old, untrackable shadow financial mechanism. It operated entirely on unrecorded cash and extreme social trust. It acted as a highly aggressive, unregulated venture capital fund, and it allowed them to systematically acquire some of the most valuable commercial real estate in the United States. This is the forensic breakdown of the gyeh, and exactly how a secret lending system engineered the rise of Koreatown, Los Angeles. The Hart-Celler Act of 1965 fundamentally restructured American immigration policy. For the first time, the law opened the door to large-scale migration from Asia. Highly educated Korean professionals began arriving in Los Angeles in massive numbers. Research conducted by sociologists He and Kim found that approximately 90% of Korean respondents in Los Angeles had held professional and white-collar occupations before immigrating. But they immediately collided with severe systemic barriers. Intense language barriers and unrecognized foreign credentials locked them out of the professional workforce. A physician trained in Seoul could not practice medicine in California. An engineer with a Korean university degree could not enter the American corporate system. They were pushed into blue-collar retail and low-margin entrepreneurship just to survive. But launching a commercial enterprise requires startup capital, and the American commercial banking system completely shut them out. If a Korean immigrant walked into a mainstream lender in the 1970s, the loan officer demanded three things. They demanded formal W-2 income verification. They demanded years of historical domestic credit scores. And they demanded hard, physical collateral to secure the loan. The immigrants possessed absolutely none of these. Institutional lenders categorized the entire diaspora as an unbankable, high-risk demographic. The traditional route to commercial leverage was completely barricaded. But if every single formal bank in the city refuses to lend you $1, how do you build one of the most powerful commercial real estate empires in California? To bypass the institutional blackout, they deployed a centuries-old shadow financial mechanism. In Korea, it is known as the gyeh. Academically, it is classified as a rotating savings and credit association. It operates as a highly aggressive, entirely unregulated venture capital fund. The architecture of the gyeh is mathematically precise. A trusted community leader organizes a strict cohort, typically around 20 individuals. Every single month, each member contributes a fixed sum of cash. 20 members each contributing $5,000 immediately generates a concentrated liquidity pool of $100,000. Every month, a different member of the cohort takes the entire $100,000 pot. The cycle systematically rotates until every single member has received the full payout. It is a massive, immediate capital injection. It provides six-figure, interest-free leverage to immigrants with absolutely zero formal credit history. It completely eliminates the need for institutional approval or commercial gatekeepers. But this architecture presents a glaring, critical mathematical risk. The system operates completely outside the American legal framework. There are no binding corporate contracts and no physical collateral requirements. So what stops a member from taking the $100,000 payout in month one and completely vanishing? The American banking system relies on the threat of litigation. Institutional lenders rely on collections, agencies, and asset forfeiture. The gyeh relies on something far more powerful and infinitely more ruthless. It operates entirely on a mechanism known as social collateral. In a hyper-insular, newly established immigrant community, reputation is the ultimate currency. If you default on a commercial bank loan, your credit score temporarily drops. If you default on a gyeh, the consequences are absolute and permanent. It guarantees immediate, total economic and social exile from the diaspora. You will never secure another job within the community network. You will never secure a commercial lease from a Korean landlord. Wholesale suppliers will permanently refuse to do business with you. Your family's name is completely blacklisted from the ethnic economic engine. This threat of absolute ostracization acts as a perfect enforcement mechanism. Research on rotating credit associations consistently confirms that default rates within the gyeh network were historically extremely low, precisely because the social cost of failure was total destruction. Unlike a bank, the gyeh did not need a collections agency. The community itself was the enforcement mechanism. And with this untrackable capital secured and insulated by trust, they aimed this financial weapon directly at the physical infrastructure of Los Angeles. Before examining what the gyeh built, it is essential to understand who actually operated it. The scholarly record is consistent on this point. Women were the primary organizers and managers of gyeh circles in the Korean American community. They recruited the members, set the contribution amounts, tracked the rotation schedule, and enforced the social accountability that made the whole system function. They held the informal authority that no legal contract could replicate. A woman who organized a gyeh circle controlled the flow of capital inside her network. She determined who received access and who did not. She was, in practical terms, a shadow banker. The businesses that Korean men opened publicly were frequently capitalized by financial networks that Korean women quietly operated. The gyeh was not a footnote to the Koreatown story. And the women who ran it were not footnotes either. Armed with massive six-figure cash injections, the diaspora went on the offensive. They targeted specific geographic zones in Los Angeles. They focused intensely on the declining Mid-Wilshire Corridor and Olympic Boulevard. By the late 1960s, the once glamorous area had entered a steep economic decline. Vacant commercial and office space filled the neighborhood that would become Koreatown. This distress was the opportunity. The gyeh provided a devastating structural advantage over traditional commercial developers. Mainstream buyers had to wait 60 to 90 days for formal bank loan underwriting and approvals. The Korean community bypassed the underwriting process entirely. They approached distressed property owners and made highly aggressive, all-cash offers. They closed commercial deals almost instantly. The human face of this territorial strategy was a man named Hae-duk Lee. Lee had graduated from Chungnam National University in Korea, worked as a miner and laborer in West Germany, and arrived in 1968. He and his wife, Gyeh, a nurse he had met in Germany, pooled approximately $7,000 in personal savings. In 1971, Lee opened the Olympic Market at the corner of Olympic and Normandy, one of the first Korean-owned grocery stores in the city. Within 3 years, the market was generating approximately $300,000 per month. Lee then purchased 5 blocks in the surrounding area. He built the VIP Palace restaurant using traditional Korean architecture and blue tiles imported directly from Korea. He built a shopping center called VIP Plaza, dedicated entirely to Korean-owned businesses. His market and restaurant became the first gathering places where Korean immigrants could socialize, hold community meetings, and stage political dinners. Other Korean entrepreneurs followed his lead, using gyeh capital to buy failing strip malls, garment factories, independent liquor stores, and wig distribution operations. The wig and garment industries became 2 of the earliest sectors where Korean-owned businesses achieved concentrated dominance in the Los Angeles economy. Research by sociologist Ivan Light found that the gyeh network was responsible for generating a substantial majority of the total startup capital for Korean businesses in Los Angeles during this period. American commercial banks had completely missed one of the largest real estate transfers in modern California history. In 1980, Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley officially named the neighborhood Koreatown. The diaspora had built a localized commercial empire, but they executed this takeover using a financial mechanism that the federal government could not see, regulate, or easily tax. The gyeh network represented a massive structural blind spot for federal regulators. It operated completely off the radar of the FDIC and the Internal Revenue Service. Payouts totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars were executed in pure cash. When checks were used, they remained intentionally untraceable to any formal corporate entity. This architecture created a dark liquidity pool that effectively disappeared from official American macroeconomic data. The federal government cannot easily tax what it cannot computationally track. But eventually, the sheer financial volume of the gyeh forced a legal reckoning. When rare internal disputes leaked into the public justice system, American courts faced a direct dilemma. They were ultimately forced to recognize the gyeh as a legally enforceable private contract. The American judicial system had officially validated an underground shadow bank. By the time commercial lenders recognized the economic engine operating in their own backyard, the acquisition was already complete. On April 29, 1992, the city of Los Angeles erupted. 4 LAPD officers were acquitted in the beating of Rodney King, and within hours, 6 days of rioting, looting, and arson began. Koreatown sat directly in the path of the destruction. Over 2,300 Korean-owned businesses were damaged, looted, or burned to the ground. The total damage to Korean-owned properties reached approximately $400 million. During the riots, police largely abandoned Koreatown to defend wealthier neighborhoods to the west. Korean Americans organized their own defense, using community radio stations to coordinate volunteers who protected their businesses with whatever they had. When the fires went out, the community that had built Koreatown with shadow capital faced the question of whether they could rebuild it the same way. They could. The gyeh network activated again in the aftermath. Community capital pools reformed. Families who had lost everything pooled resources with families who had survived. The same parallel financial infrastructure that had built the neighborhood in the 1970s was deployed again to resurrect it from the ashes of 1992. The gyeh did not just build Koreatown once, it built it twice. Today, Los Angeles Koreatown is one of the most densely concentrated, high-value commercial zones in the United States. It is a multi-billion-dollar commercial real estate empire built on a foundation that no mainstream institution financed. It was not engineered by Wall Street private equity. It was not financed by traditional commercial banks. It was built by a demographic that refused to be locked out of the American economy. When the institutional system demanded credit scores and physical collateral, they simply bypassed the system entirely. Women organized the capital pools. Families pooled cash in rotating circles that left no paper trail. And that shadow capital was used to aggressively acquire the physical infrastructure of one of the largest cities in the United States. When the city tried to burn it all down in 1992, they used the same mechanism to build it again. The gyeh is the ultimate proof of a systemic financial workaround. It is a masterclass in decentralized leverage, and it is the exact mechanism that allowed a completely unbanked community to quietly buy an American city, lose it in 6 days of fire, and then buy it back.